Remember this number, 30%. That is the difference between how often men reach orgasm during sex compared to their female partners. Study after study shows this gap across tens of thousands of people in short relationships, long marriages, happy couples, and even those who say they feel deeply connected. And before we blame age, hormones, or compatibility, the truth is much simpler and much more human. In many cases, men were never truly taught how female pleasure actually works. Not in school, not in relationships, and certainly not through the unrealistic messages most people absorbed growing up. Once you understand that, intimacy begins to look completely different. And what makes this conversation so important is that so many couples silently struggle with this issue without ever talking about it openly. Men often assume they are doing something wrong. Women often stay quiet because they do not want to hurt their partner's feelings or create tension. Over time, both people can begin to feel disconnected, even when love is still there. The painful part is that many relationships are not missing attraction, they are missing understanding. And if you have ever wondered why emotional closeness sometimes fades even in otherwise loving relationships, this conversation may explain more than you expect. If you are watching this right now, I want you to know you are not alone in this experience. So many couples, especially in long-term relationships, quietly carry confusion, frustration, or even embarrassment around intimacy. But the couples who grow closer are not the ones who are perfect. They are the ones willing to learn, communicate, and stay emotionally open to each other. So I want to ask you something very honestly. Do you think most people were ever truly taught how emotional connection affects physical intimacy? Let me know in the comments because this conversation matters more than most people realize. And if this topic feels meaningful to you already, take a moment to like the video and subscribe because these are the conversations that can genuinely transform relationships. Mary Smith, host of Senior Mindful Living YouTube channel, has spent years discussing the emotional realities that shape long-term relationships, and one pattern appears again and again. Couples often believe intimacy problems are caused by fading attraction, aging, or incompatibility, when in reality the deeper issue is usually emotional disconnection combined with incomplete understanding. Once couples begin learning instead of blaming each other, the entire emotional atmosphere changes. One of the biggest misconceptions about female pleasure is the idea that it should happen automatically through penetration alone. Research consistently shows that for many women, clitoral stimulation is central to orgasm and overall satisfaction. Yet culturally, this is still rarely discussed with clarity. Many men grow up believing intimacy is mostly about performance rather than attentiveness, and that misunderstanding creates pressure on both sides. The man feels responsible for achieving a result, the woman feels pressure to respond in a certain way, but intimacy was never meant to feel like a performance review. Think about how many couples never actually discuss what feels good emotionally or physically. They rely on assumptions. They hope love alone will somehow create understanding. But emotional and physical connection do not deepen through guessing. They deepen through curiosity. A woman who feels emotionally safe is far more likely to relax into pleasure because the nervous system plays a huge role in arousal. This is something researchers have explored for years. The female body responds not only to touch, but also to emotional context. Stress, resentment, anxiety, criticism, emotional distance, unresolved conflict, all of these can quietly shut down responsiveness even when attraction still exists. And this is where many men completely misunderstand what women mean by emotional connection. Emotional safety is not about saying perfect words. It is about consistency. It is about whether she feels heard when she speaks, whether affection exists outside the bedroom, whether conflict gets repaired instead of ignored, whether she feels appreciated as a whole person rather than only desired physically. Those small daily moments matter far more than most people realize. I once heard a story from a couple married for over 35 years. The husband genuinely believed their intimacy issues were simply caused by aging. But during therapy, his wife quietly admitted something heartbreaking. She said, "I stopped feeling emotionally close years ago, but I never knew how to explain it without sounding critical." What changed their relationship was not some dramatic technique. It was that he finally started listening without becoming defensive. He began showing affection during ordinary moments. He slowed down. He became emotionally present again. And within months, they described feeling closer than they had in years. That is why slowing down matters so much. For many women, intimacy begins long before physical touch. It begins with emotional presence throughout the day, a thoughtful message, a warm conversation, a moment of appreciation, a feeling of being chosen and valued. When women describe wanting more foreplay, they are often describing a desire for emotional and sensory buildup, not simply a checklist of physical actions. Physiologically, female arousal often takes more time to fully develop. The body needs time for comfort, responsiveness, and relaxation. Yet many couples rush intimacy without realizing how much connection is lost in the process. And interestingly, many experts believe aging can actually improve intimacy when couples adapt emotionally rather than resist change. Slower pacing often creates deeper awareness, more communication, and greater emotional connection. For couples over 60, this becomes especially important. Hormonal changes, menopause, medication, stress, and physical aging can absolutely influence the body. But those changes do not eliminate desire for closeness. In fact, many women say emotional intimacy becomes even more important later in life. What hurts relationships is not aging itself. It is when couples stop being curious about each other. Here is something powerful you can try tonight. Instead of focusing on outcomes, focus on conversation. Ask your partner one simple question. What helps you feel emotionally close to me lately? Then listen carefully without interrupting, correcting, or defending yourself. Most people underestimate how healing genuine listening can be. Emotional openness creates trust. Trust creates relaxation. Relaxation creates deeper intimacy. Another powerful exercise is slowing down physical touch without immediately turning it into intercourse. Sit close, hold hands longer, hug without rushing, kiss without expectation. Research on bonding hormones like oxytocin shows that affectionate touch itself strengthens emotional connection and reduces stress responses in the body. Sometimes couples rediscover intimacy not by doing more, but by removing pressure. And here is something many women wish men understood. Feeling desired is not the same as feeling emotionally seen. A compliment about appearance may feel good briefly, but feeling understood emotionally creates lasting closeness. When a man notices her stress, listens to her concerns, remembers small details, or responds with patience instead of irritation, it changes the emotional climate of the relationship. That emotional climate directly affects intimacy more than many people realize. The truth is, the so-called 30% gap is not really about failure. It is about missing education, emotional misunderstanding, rushed connection, and silence between partners who actually care about each other. And the encouraging part is this: these patterns can change. Relationships can improve dramatically when couples replace assumptions with openness and replace pressure with understanding. Because at the end of the day, great intimacy is not created by performance. It is created by emotional presence. It is created when two people feel safe enough to be honest, patient enough to listen, and connected enough to grow together instead of pulling apart in silence. So if this conversation resonated with you, share your thoughts below. Have you noticed how emotional connection affects intimacy in relationships? Your experience may help someone else feel less alone. And if you want more conversations about emotional health, relationships, psychology, and meaningful connection, subscribe to the channel and join us again. Because sometimes the smallest shift in understanding can completely transform the way two people love each other.